Okay. I guess I better go ahead and talk about this because I don't know what to say about this because a lot of people have been, you know, trying to talk to me about this situation with JewWario. I know that this is going to be wrong. I know that there's been a lot of, you know, accusations and a lot of things that were going on. Now, the thing about this is that a lot of people talked about JewWario, especially Pat the NES Punk. Now, a lot of people right now, it's kind of a sad story because this is something that bothered me the most about what happened. Because let's face it, the accusations, it wasn't just one woman, it was two women. Now, great, my dog always does this to me. Okay, I'll be back. Come here, boy. Come here. What's the matter? What's the matter, boy? What's the matter? You okay? Yeah, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. My dog tends to yell and scream and does this stuff. Now, the accusations about Channel Awesome, especially by what this woman has claimed, it's sort of a sad story indeed, because a lot of people have a hard time, you know, some people believe in the victim because of what was going on in Channel Awesome, especially all the shady shit that happened, all the fucked up shit that happened. It sort of is a sad story indeed, because to find out that even though, you know, JewWario was a very good person, a lot of people felt he was a very good person, and I know that most people have a hard time, you know, because some people remembered him as this guy who was warm and welcoming. When you step into a convention and listening to him talk about, you know, Japanese import games or Kamen Rider or some anime stuff, he'll talk about it with you. And surprisingly, you know, it's sort of a sad story that he died killing himself. Now, there's been... Okay, the woman here claims in this post that she did on Channel Awesome Reddit. Now, this is what they said. That's a different girl that they were talking about in the Google Doc. He did that to her. That's absolutely true. I'm someone else. He sexually assaulted me while I passed out and woke up while it was happening. What's the matter, Opie? What's the matter? Why are you being so mean to me, huh? Why are you gonna get... Okay, I'll let you outside, but you gotta be good. You gotta be a good dog. Yeah. That's my life for you, ladies and gentlemen. My dog. He's a very good boy. I'll let him out for a bit. There you go. Now, the sad story about this is that it wasn't just one woman, it was two women. Two young women. I never followed JW's work, and I won't now. I only heard about him after his death. I'm sure a lot of fans simply refused to hear a single bad word against him, hence the backlash when people came out to share their stories. It's awful that it's not an excuse at all, but people just believe what they want to believe, even when there's irrefutable evidence. Even when it's in the expense of an innocent victim, such as yourself, it fucking sucks. That I'll agree with. Thank you, Stephen Skinner. Now, the thing here is that a lot of people, you know, expressing their support for the victim in this whole situation, because even I'm surprised Justin Carmichael's wife is also in support of it too, believing in the victim, from what I heard in this situation, because this is sort of a sad story because of what happened. Because the thing about this is that a lot of people who idolize JewWario, and I'll show you who JewWario is. JewWario. You know, and a lot of people talked about this. This is Justin Carmichael, aka JewWario. Now, a lot of people really liked him. He was a well-liked character. You can see by his face that he was a very friendly person. But the sad part about this story is that he killed himself. Now, especially, you know, hearing about this, the death of JewWario Carmichael, it was sort of a crazy sort of thing. Especially, you know, I know that Angry Joe talked about it when his death happened. You know, they were friends. But it's sort of a sad story of a person who a lot of people really liked. You know, especially in the convention scene. You know, and a lot of people really liked him. In the convention scene, he talked about video games. He talked about, you know, a lot of things. And it's sort of sad that Justin Carmichael, import aficionado, advised others, dead at 42. Now, it's harder to talk about it because I know that some people, you know, feel very, you know, hurt by this, because especially the light of the accusations, they didn't want to turn this into a situation. Now, I'm going to show you guys a YouTube video from the talks about the allegations and everything, especially from this guy. This is from Count Jacula's show, and this is what he has to say about it. So
yeah, I'm here
I'm gonna let
tell
him
you
talk about this
that
because
I know about,
he was the one that witnessed this. This is his claim.
Justin Carmichael, aka.
And I'm sorry that my audio is glitching, because I probably should restart this computer. It's been acting up lately. I might have to check on this, because this is some bullshit that I had to deal with. But I'm gonna go ahead and leave the image right here of Justin Carmichael and the image of Pedo Peddler, aka. So I'm gonna let him play. I'm gonna just play the audio right here from the accusations by JewWario sexual assault allegations fallout. Now, here we go.
JewWario. Now, first thing you have to understand is, first of all, I apologize for the overall quality of this. I'm recording this on iPhone because I'm on a trip, and I wanted to treat this trip as a little bit more of a vacation than anything else. So I didn't bring any of the recording equipment with me, except for the iPhone. And but a lot of this stuff is coming out now, so I think it's better that I talk about it now rather than later. Otherwise, it's just going to haunt me the entire weekend, and I don't want to ruin my trip as if that actually was any sort of priority. Yeah, this is gonna suck, so you're gonna want to strap in. It's also going to get a little graphic, because I feel to really get across what had happened, we have to get a bit graphic. All right, so as a lot of people have suspected, let's start from the beginning. Channel Awesome released a sort of bizarre response to some of the criticisms by putting out this weird forum post. And the first post is a conversation between Mashad, Rob Walker, and Doug Walker about some anonymous member, because they blanked out the name, and about sexual misconduct. And many people have suspected that they're talking about Justin Carmichael, or as we know him, JewWario. And I'm here to tell you what I know. Now, a lot of what I know is been told to me by the victim, or at least one of them. And I kind of want to start out by saying I believe them. I don't just believe them because they told me. I believe them because, A, their telling of events is the only version of the events that makes any sense, given what I actually know. And it was corroborated quite independently by someone who had every reason to hate her and to want to discredit her. But instead, she was like, no, that's the same story she told me when I ran into her on the street, and she just basically broke down and told me everything. So I don't know about, I've also heard accusations that Justin Carmichael was like grooming underage girls. I have no idea if any of that's true. I don't know anything about that. All I know is this, and it centers around MagFest of 2013. And you'll notice that the time date stamp of this event, as you know, from the chat logs of Channel Awesome, correspond to just the week after this MagFest. This MagFest is also the last time I ever saw Justin Carmichael alive. And whew, here we go. So apparently on the Saturday night of this MagFest, this person I know is going to remain anonymous, got way too drunk, as she kind of did during that period of time, and ran into Justin in the arcade. MagFest every year puts up and rents out one of the ballrooms of the Gaylord Hotel and just fills it with arcade machines. And they're all free. Like, all you need is like a membership badge, and you just go in there and you play Donkey Kong for like 10 hours or whatever you want to do. So she got drunk because there had been some shit that she was already having a bad time, and she runs into JewWario. And at first things are kind of okay, and then apparently starts getting a little pushy. But it hasn't crossed the line yet. It's just one of those, okay, he's obviously drunk too. Maybe he's not like getting the hint, you know? So she's like, okay, well, I'm going to finish like playing Street Fighter 2 or whatever. And then she starts going up to her room, because she's actually staying in the Gaylord, or I think. I'm not sure if she was actually staying at the Gaylord, but she's definitely staying either there or like one of the ones across the street. Pretty sure it was the Gaylord. So they go up to her. She goes up to her room. He follows. Now that's already kind of a red flag. And she's just like, okay, but like she's intoxicated. She's not thinking straight either. She goes to her room, and then her, she's kind of doing that, like, no, don't follow me, like, no, I'm okay. And he's being like, well, I want to make sure that you're safe. I want to make sure everything's okay, blah, 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 and so he hasn't really done anything worth giving him the fuck you. It's just uncomfortable, but she's just kind of chalking it up to just like being drunk and awkward. Like, this isn't like hell worthy. This is just, ooh, this is a little cringe worthy. That's about to change. Okay, so she gets into her room. She walks through the door. Immediately fucking just trips over a table, passes out on the floor. Now here's where it gets graphic. So strap in. So she wakes up and she realizes that someone is naked next to her. And this is her tale of events. Someone naked next to her, and they have their fingers in her vagina. She starts to realize what's going on. It's just like, whoa, how did this happen? Like, what's going on? And she, like, she's sitting there kind of paralyzed because, I mean, someone's got their fingers in your pussy. Like, they're just kind of like, oh, you do not expect this. So, there's Justin, according to her, naked, fingering her. And she's like, excuse me? But she's still like, she's still like buzzed. She's still not quite like, she's aware of what's happening, but she's not like, she ain't sober yet. And he's like, oh, well, she doesn't even like understand what his response was, but she's like, you gotta get out of here. And she pulls a random name out of a hat. A random reviewer that she knows is coming up to the room. Dude pulls out, gets his clothes on quickly, runs out the door. That is her description of events. Now, believe it or not, this is where I enter the story. I'm crossing the threshold of the MagFest lobby. And I haven't had a chance to hang out with Justin yet. Which is something that I've hung out with him at several cons, and so it was like, oh man, I know he's here. I haven't had a chance to like hang out with him. I'm going across the lobby, which is this is the main lobby. Like, basically, if you want to get back to the convention from the hotel, from the rooms, you got to cross this threshold. So I see him, and for the first time I've ever run into him, he looks disheveled. And I'm like, oh, but I figured he was just like running himself ragged, like doing shit at the show like he always does. So I'm just like, hey, Justin, what's up? And I start talking to him, and he gets really, for like 10 minutes, he is super dodgy. And I'm just sort of like, the fuck happened? The fuck is going on? Like, he's probably just like exhausted. And I talked to him for about 30 minutes. I smoke a couple cigarettes. you know, and I'm like, hey man, you know, I'm sorry we didn't do that crossover, because we had to cancel crossover we were going to do, because it just wasn't time. I had actually been bugging him the entire convention. Hey, do you want to do that thing? Do you want to do that thing? Do you want to do that thing? But it was just like, this just wasn't time for it. And he was like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, don't worry about it, man. It's fine. There'll be other conventions. Wah, wah, wah. Little did I know there wouldn't be. And when we got back from MagFest a week later, he left the site. Now, this is also when he was telling me the story of the Retroware guys and how he was hanging out with them. I don't think they had anything to do with it. The only thing that I know about him hanging out with the Retroware guys is indeed he and them got loaded. So, that's... and of course, a year after that, killed himself. Now, I don't know... I can't prove... and the only part of that story that I can prove is the minute I run into him. Well, here's the thing. These rumors had been I'd heard this rumor for a while, but it was so fucking fantastical. Like, oh, Justin raped 50 people. Excuse me? You know, like, Justin raped 50 people, and, you know, Channel Awesome's covering it up. And I'm like, I don't think Channel Awesome's gonna... I don't think they can. That's a lot of people. And there were a whole bunch of people coming out of the woodwork, like, this kind of, like, backhandedly accusing him. So I started digging, because I was like... And this was, like,
people you consider a friend. You always want to not think they're could potentially be monsters up to that point. You know what I mean? It's like, well, you know, I'm befriending someone that potentially could be a total sleazeball. You don't ever really get there quickly. You know, looking back, and by the way, I spoke to someone that at the time could verify the allegation of a sexual assault allegedly committed by Justin. I'm not going to speak to the potential grooming of underage girls. That I don't. There might be something that comes out of that. I have no idea.
Sure.
If that's part of this or that's connected, who knows? If more potential victims come out, I guess we'll have to see. But we can just speak to what I know at the time and what I've seen in trying to put two and two together. It wasn't a secret looking at Justin's behavior, at least at conventions, that he interacted with fans.
Sure.
A lot of them were young women. He had a predominantly younger female fan base to begin with.
Right.
He was we talked about it before, a patriarchal figure, not just for the men, I guess, to some extent, but the females. And that's just the way he was. He was older. When he passed away, I think he was 42 or 43. And a lot of these people, fans in general, Channel Awesome, are usually at most in their early to mid 20s. I mean, at most. A lot of them were, you know, that 17 to 22-ish, sort of like late high school, early college range. So I didn't think that was too particularly strange given the overall younger fanship. It made sense. And then the fact that how he preached, he was a Mr. Rogers type character that he portrayed. So to me, it was like, okay, that makes sense that people would gravitate towards that. But at conventions, though, there were things I saw that left me uncomfortable. Nothing I saw that was illegal, by the way, but just things that I thought were a little over the line. You know, I saw him give fans like shoulder and back rubs. Like they were willing participants, but the fact that he was doing that like in hallways outside of panels at MagFest, I thought was kind of inappropriate to do that. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you can get a reputation for being like that, for example. And I'll get into the other story later afterwards. So hell, the lasting image I have of Justin, the last time I saw him, which was MagFest 2014. And that was a MagFest, by the way, that I didn't get to see Justin, for better or for worse. I was running around setting up interviews for Video Game Years, getting interviews with Egoraptor and Pro Jared and Mike and James and I think Brennel Floss, and just running around and doing all these things at the time that I didn't get a chance to interact with anyone. I was just busy. So the one of the only few times I got to see Justin was at the end, like going up the escalator, literally going up the end with like my DVD box, and he had his arm around a female fan walking like down the hallway. And that was the last image I ever had with him. So I never talked to Justin about his personal life. I felt like either it was apparent that his marriage was either they had an open marriage or it was broken enough that he felt comfortable doing that there was an understanding. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to get away with that, doing that stuff in the open without people asking questions.
Sure.
You know, so I always figured that was what it was. You know, he had this patriarchal, nice guy image, but hey, he did talk to these fans and maybe he dabbled every now and then. And that's where I thought that's where it stood. You know, it's like, and maybe that's where it stood for most of his behavior, as far as I know. You know, like I said, I never saw him do anything illegal, you know, or heard anything from anyone that he was doing something wrong at the time. So when these revelations come out, I'm not totally shocked based upon his other behavior that I've seen on the side. And one thing in particular I'll get into that happened in mid-2014, which was after he was gone from Channel Awesome, since he was, mid-2013. Mid-2013, because he was gone from, after MagFest 2013, he was let go from Channel Awesome. We'll get into that. So I have a lot of mixed feelings. I'm obviously extremely disappointed in Justin. Like again, he did keep me on arm's length when it came to stuff, but I felt like he confided in me with other things. But you know, he obviously had a dark side. A lot of people do. This is darker than other people's dark sides, if what we know to be alleged is true, and from it's more likely than not from what I've heard and the person I spoke to, and there could be other cases that come out. So yeah, so what do you do in a situation like this? Someone who was deified after their death, well, at the time though, people knew that this guy's probably done some bad things for a year before he passed away. People knew, and I'll get into how fucking annoyed I am at that. But what do you do at that point? You know what I mean? Like, how do you go back? So one of the better videos I've seen about this fallout was Kaylin, aka Mars Girl, who was really close friends with Justin for a long time, closer friend than me. She finished his Famine Common Rider like send-off movie. She put in her own money and months of time, like a tribute to Justin, like good friends. What is she? Does she feel like a fool after this? I mean, should she feel like a fool? Should people that put up tribute videos about how Justin touched their lives feel like a fool because of revelations of stuff in his personal life that's coming out now? I will say this. If Justin spoke to you in some way from his videos he produced, for example, his You're Not Stupid video that tons of people have talked about and seen, like his uplifting message, don't feel bad if that message touched you in some way because the person behind it may have been a monster at some point in their personal life. The message was still the message. You shouldn't feel ashamed that you felt some way or it helped you, because the message was the message. It's going to come from someone. It helped you out. You shouldn't feel terrible about that. You know, I'm not sure how you personally are going to square it all, the message from the messenger. You know, at this point, I'm done processing it. I'm obviously not happy for lots of reasons about it, because people knew about it and didn't say anything. And allowed him to still be in the community without telling others that this sort of person was around, that to me is borderline sickening, if not sickening in of itself, and cowardly. To me, you can protect potential victims while still warning the community about someone who's out there. So I don't want to hear any bullshit about, well, the victims didn't want to potentially be outed. Okay.
Then
So-
don't out the victims.
Don't out the victims, but why don't you let, I don't know, conventions know that this person's out there? Let a website that still was hosting his videos.
Yeah, allow future, tell future employers that, this may be problematic.
I was the liaison between Justin and RetroWare, and we didn't have a sniff of this stuff when we brought him on in the fall of 2012. No idea.
2013.
No, it was fall 2012.
Oh, okay.
He came on.
I thought he was let go in mid 2013 after.
He was on RetroWare
Okay.
before.
Okay.
So, and when he was let go from Channel Awesome at the time, let me make sure I get my timeline right, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened, because he was on, I believe was he on one or two MagFace Mass, but when he was let go from Channel Awesome, I asked him why were you let go, and he gave me like this answer, like, just felt like it was time to move on, and it didn't feel like there was growth there and everything else. Like, it was like somewhat reasonable response. It wasn't like, I didn't feel like, why should I dig deeper than that at the time? It's like, well, okay, well, if he did something horrible, I guess we'd find out about it. Well, that's my naivety. Like if he did something else, if he got kicked off the site for something totally awful, we would know about it. You know what I mean?
Right. What he said sounds like perhaps a vague excuse of maybe they didn't like his stuff, and that was just the easy way of saying,
sure.
Right.
Like in my head, I'm like, yeah, if I saw him giving a back shoulder rub to a woman, maybe one fan complained about it or thought it was inappropriate for him to do that. So I'm like, okay, I can see that. That's not totally horrific. It's still not good, but I thought maybe that could be the worst case scenario where someone said that's over the line and you shouldn't allow that behavior. And I've been like, okay, that's reasonable. It's not something totally damning you shouldn't be able to come back from or be forgiven from. Like that's what I thought that could have been possibly the worst case scenario based upon what I personally saw at the time. So I don't know. What are your thoughts while I collect for my second round of monologuing, I guess?
So, my first concern is, with the people who have come forward, with the allegations, one, it could not have been easy. Two, I understand why it can't be easy, and I hope the blowback that they must be getting from this is, I hope they're sheltering themselves from it in an appropriate way. There's nothing. Justin's gone, so there's nothing that can really be done, and if the allegations are true, which with what you've discussed, and with the little bit that I've heard, and I guess with some things that maybe now I can extrapolate, I feel that we're in the territory where this perhaps is more likely than not.
Oh, I'd say
I really do think that this is true. And
again, I totally understand not wanting any
come forward.
victim stories to come forward after he's dead, but there was this nice year, at least in between,
yes,
where they apparently knew about it. At Channel Awesome knew about it.
I'm getting to that.
Oh yeah,
I'm getting to that. So I believe the allegations. Yes, they're allegations. I believe the allegations. That's the easiest way to sum that up. So there's unfortunately no real action they can take. And that must be incredibly frustrating for them. So my initial reaction to this is, Jesus Christ. I have to wonder what they're going through. And
when you say we, you talk about the people that knew about this or the victims?
The victims.
Oh yeah, the victims.
victims.
Victims see someone deified, and then no one says no one comes out saying, "Okay, this guy
they're
was
deified." There's nothing they can do about it, and there's no hope for real closure.
Sure.
And that it upsets me, but not in that. But for them, I don't know how to accurately put that. It makes me extraordinarily angry and frustrated because they're never going to see.
There's never justice to be done.
There's no justice to be done.
The deification of Justin bothered me to an extent. Obviously, you want to honor someone, but the reason why I always felt uncomfortable, I felt uncomfortable when people. I mean, obviously, if you have emotions, if you're gonna be careful about it, cry. I'm not judging that. What I'm judging is knowing your confidence in knowing who that person was. That's the one thing where, because here's the thing, I can say with confidence that I knew Justin better than 98% of the people that did the tribute videos that spoke about him tearfully, and I still didn't know him.
Yeah.
I didn't know him at the time. I didn't know him at his death. I didn't feel comfortable speaking at his tribute at Con Bravo 2014. I was not comfortable because I was like, I don't feel qualified to talk about this man's life, because while I knew him professionally, while I considered him a friend on some level, I didn't know about his personal life as much as I did, obviously, and I didn't know what type of person he was going back. I knew him from the persona of the videos as a producer first. When you speak with video producers online, when you get to know whoever it is, whether it's a James Rolfe, whether it's a Norm Caruso, whether it's a whoever, you know them originally from their video work. Right. As producers, you have to unravel that wrapper to find out the person underneath, to see if you like that person. I never got to that comfortable point with Justin, unfortunately. For better or for worse. Maybe if I did, maybe I could have stemmed some of this. I don't fucking know. I could have been there for him in a different way. He didn't feel comfortable enough telling me about this other shit or his depression. I knew something was wrong. I didn't know it was that bad. So the point is this, though, is that when you're deifying someone to the extent that what happened with Justin, this can happen. It's not always going to happen, but this can happen because no one truly knew him personally. No one, except for some of the higher ups and some of the content producers kind of knew at Channel Awesome. I'm not going to speculate who besides the higher ups, but they knew enough that they had to let him go.
I think that's what enrages me most, is that there were people who knew who did nothing. And why? There are some who say it was the victim's wishes, and as you said before, you can let people know without exposing the victims. And the reason why you do that is you have to look at the larger picture. What if he does that again and again and again? You have to think about the ability of this person to continue doing this. It's rarely an isolated incident. They scare. When this sort of behavior is a pattern, it's not uncommon for them to scare past victims so they can continue committing this crime.
Sure, and then by him sticking around, a possible victim can feel like they can be gaslit if they come out with saying their story, or feel like no one's going to believe me. Right. Which I think one of the potential victims or alleged victims said that. It's like, I feel like, oh, this guy's treated like a pillar of the community, a beacon. What if I say something? I'm going to be automatically deemed a liar. So the fact that those higher ups have to fucking live with this shit now, because you think Retro would have kept them on? No. If they knew about this, John and Lance are fucking family men with kids. You think they would have had him on the site? He would have been gone the next fucking hour.
Oh yeah.
He would not have been allowed at any panels. He would not. And then word would have spread that this is persona non grata. He would have been ostracized.
Yeah, he
would have been ostracized.
He wouldn't have had another minute as a content provider.
But instead, you had a nice fucking year where he went to Con Bravo that year. He went to the next following MagFest as a guest, a part of RetroWare, was on the panel. He probably went to 3 or 4 other conventions I can't think of in that year. So there are potential victims out there because people didn't warn the community, and that to me is disappointing. It is. It's disappointing.
And I should probably address my brief relationship with Justin, because I was it shocked me, and I was broken up when he killed himself. I was just getting into. I was just becoming part of, I guess, the community.
That was like your second MagFest?
It was I've only done one MagFest.
That was your only one?
Yeah, it was my first MagFest.
2014.
And 2014. The podcast had been going for about 6 months. It had just started picking up in the past 2 or 3 months, and I mean, it's funny.
It was introduction to the scene.
It was my introduction to the scene. It was my first time meeting any people there, and it's funny because I'm still kind of uncomfortable. There are still things that make me uncomfortable about going out into like that big world now, and I've done a bunch of conventions at this point. But back then, I really felt like a fish out of water, and Justin had. About 2-3 months prior, that October and November, had, he had started popping up in the comments section, and he had contacted me through Twitter, and, he had made it known that he was, a fan of the podcast, and he had enjoyed my takes on things. So that was the first big member of the YouTube community who had, complimented, what we were doing. And had specifically said something to me, I think. And, to me, that was a nice compliment at that time. And he came off, as he did to, most people, as, warm and genuine. And, he would encourage me here and there, especially in those first months, when I would get a little, nervous or unsure of myself there. And I met him at... MagFest, and I was just looking into starting to make pins and stuff, which I do a lot of now. And he was making pins, and he told me a little bit about how to get into it. And it's weird to say it now, but I generally thought of him as a safe person, which apparently now is that was his MO. So I just feel weird about it, because those seem to kind of be, now looking at the news that's come out, that just seems to be like that's how he worked. So
you would hope that was weaknesses of him, and not his what he planned to do through the character. You would hope that he wasn't that total monster where I constructed this persona just so I can talk to these young girls.
Right.
You would fucking hope that.
And that's
obviously the result's the same, but you would hope.
I'm not trying to say that, he was doing it to guys and girls both, but I'm just saying, like, was that how he worked with women to get what he wanted from them? But that's also how he worked with guys to try to keep people on his side.
I'll say this.
Was that how he tried to...
But by the way, he came to RetroWare. It was earlier than I thought. It was April 26, 2012.
So anyways, what I'm getting at is... but that's why... But, he whatever the reason was, is I felt very trusting of him very quickly. And when he passed, I felt like I had lost someone who had... who was safe, protecting, that sort of thing.
You thought he was like a fatherly figure, someone you
right?
Felt
exactly.
Around.
So
I'll say this.
That's why I reacted the way I did. And now looking back on it, it's like,
And by the way,
how much of this was truly false? How much of this was really just a work on his part?
Sure.
It really screws.
By the way,
it's fucked up.
I'm keeping that video up because it was a moment in time. I don't think it should be taken down. It's how we felt.
No, you asked me immediately afterwards, and I said no. I said that looks bad. I said you leave it up because...
And people are taking down the tribute videos. They're re-editing his cameos out of videos and stuff. And it's like, you can't erase it from history. You can't. I will say this. I forgot to bring this up when in terms of being around me and working, he was a fucking professional. Like when he came, when we did the RetroWare, the last time RetroWare went to E3 in 2013, he was a fucking pro. Like he did everything. He was on camera with me and did great. I had no reason, like professionally, he was fantastic. I saw nothing there that was like, oh, something's off, or he's using this for other means. At least for that fucking 4-day weekend or 4 days.
And when I say stuff like this, it's not to defend him. It's to try to clarify how this shit happens.
Sure. Yeah. So again, you watch that Marsgo video, because she even said, like, I worked on this fucking feature-length film in his memory, and should I take it down? It's like, no, it's a work. At the time, it meant something. There was people that acted in it. They went, that they put a lot of work into it. Stunt people, special effects people. It should exist. But she said, I'm disabling the comments and putting up a little disclaimer about we had no idea this is how the guy was. I would, again, people that knew about him, we're gonna have to fucking live with it. They're gonna have to live the fact that they could have told people in the community. There's other potential victims out there because they didn't tell the community.
Yeah,
they're going to fucking live with that. That to me is the most harrowing part of all this disclosure of the Channel Awesome stuff coming out. Is that this is the final nail in the proverbial coffin, because that is heinous, absolutely heinous. Not to let other people know about a potential danger, fucking heinous and cowardly. And you can try to structure it however you want to.
No, there's no way.
But it's heinous. And yeah. And he's not here to answer for any potential crimes or actions at this point, over 4 years later. So it is what it is. It's a shocking blow to many people that thought they knew him. It's a blow to the community. And hopefully the potential victims out there, even if they can't find any solace, maybe they can feel more comfortable coming forward now, at least telling their story to get it off their chest. Maybe there's that
right
small fucking silver line, if there's any silver lining at all of this, which I'm struggling to find. Maybe it's that, or the fact that if this ever happens again, people will not be so fucking hesitant to let people know about a potential danger, for the community.
Well, if there's a time and a climate for it, I think now is it.
Sure. There you have it. I'm not sure where else we can go from this.
I don't think there's... to talk about anything else after this seems like it would be wrong.
So how about that Sean Hannity, huh?
Looks like a fucking thumb.
According to Frank, that'd be Peyton Manning. Looks like a thumb. His head's a thumb. So, yep. Not sure how to close this properly.
Sorry, guys. It's hard for us to believe in this story because it sort of did hit the fan pretty hard for a lot of us who saw this happen, especially in the community. I understand that a lot of people who are big fans of JewWario, who loved and remembered him. I would say this. I get that some people were hurt by this and were upset by this because this was the type of thing that happened. Now, I can't really blame anyone. I understand that Channel Awesome was trying to keep this on the down low, and right now they're paying for it. They're paying for it in a harsh way. A lot of us who idolize these people, like JewWario, guy with the glasses, aka aka Nostalgia Critic, a lot of people felt betrayed by this. And it sort of is a sad story indeed, because the fact that, you know, I do agree with Pat and Ian about this, because they both are reasonable people. They discuss a lot of things. Sure, there's some things I disagree with them about, but they make good points. But as far as I know, this whole shit show of what happened with JewWario, aka Justin Carmichael, a lot of people know him professionally as a YouTuber who makes You Can Play This video game series, which a lot of people really liked. Some people felt it was a really good series, but, you know, due to the accusations that happened, it wasn't just one woman, it was probably more than one, but we don't know, because there's only two, which is only two women in question in the confirmation of this whole situation, because Iron Liz only knows that, and she does not want to, you know, bring the victims' names out into the light of things, because they don't really deserve to be hurt or harmed or anything like that. But a lot of people right now are believing the victims in the situation, and it's sad that I know that some people may not believe the whole situation with JewWario, but it's sort of damning, especially from what Pat mentioned about what happened in MagFest, and what Count Dankula's show talked about in his story, which kind of sort of confirms this in a way, because of the timeline back in 2014, as he said that it happened in MagFest. Now, the whole issue kind of is sort of, I can't really say it's damning, I can't really say it is, but there's been a lot of accusations, there's been a lot of problems, and right now, you know, a lot of people are torn apart by this, about the whole JewWario situation, and it sort of hurts inside, and I know it hurts inside for a lot of people, because I was kind of shocked too by this. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this, and a lot of people feel that this have really affected the community as a whole. And I can't really blame people for this. It was a very scary situation, especially what was going on. Yeah, I'm sorry if I wasn't paying attention to the chat. Yeah, and I do agree with you on that. On the internet are completely different in their lives. Now, I kind of felt sad. I kind of felt sad for what happened, because a lot of people have been talking about this and I personally, you know, felt sorry for JewWario and also the victims too, because from what was going on here in this whole situation, especially the discussions about this, and I had to show the recordings of what Pat and Ian discussed about this, because we didn't know JewWario personally. I don't know JewWario personally, and I will admit that too. But the sad thing about this story is that this this whole situation, especially what Social Justice Warrior, which I recommend you check out his channel when he talked about the whole JewWario accusations and everything, pointing out the evidence and everything in this whole situation, especially with the damning of Channel Awesome and what they have done to keep everything, you know, on the down low, protecting a person who they knew for years as a really nice guy, but they couldn't deal with the accusations of someone outside of Channel Awesome coming in and telling them that this was what was going on. And Channel Awesome secretly, you know, out of all things, kept it away from the fact that they were afraid that Gamergate, of all things, you know, was going to defend Justin Carmichael. Look, it's really damning what Dan Olsen did, because Dan Olsen kept it, because what he did was the dumbest thing ever. He kept this on the down low, didn't want it to blurt it out because he wanted to keep it a secret, because Channel Awesome, of all people, were in it for the money. They didn't give a shit about who they harmed, who they hurt. All they gave a shit about was making the money off of it. And this was the type of shit that happened. And all the accusations that happened to be what was going on with Justin, it sort of hit the fan for Channel Awesome, because they chose to keep this on the down low because they didn't want to ruin their reputation or Justin's reputation on this. They had to let him go, even though he said he left. He said, "Look, I'm just going to go and leave and just do my own thing." And it explains what happens next after this. On the timeline of what happened, he felt depressed because he couldn't get views, and you could tell when you look at his subscriber base was at 30,000. And the surprising thing of this whole story, it sort of hurt. It sort of hit the fan right there. Yeah, I did check out his video. Because I did check out the video of this, because this was the video that I looked up, because these were accusations, and I did check out Count Dankula show and his explanation of the events that happened. And Pat's story about what happened at the convention when he saw JewWario with a woman kind of confirms Count Dankula's story, because he said, if you listen to him back in 2014, it does confirm Count Dankula's story about the woman, because even he witnessed what happened when he saw a woman right by his shoulders taking her up the escalator. Now, keep in mind, this could be true. I can't really confirm this is, but this is what Pat said. And then, of course, I took Count Dankula's word out of Pat. Both of them kind of had a sort of a confirmation of what happened on the events at MagFest. And this is why I kind of, was like, you know what? That does explain a little bit about what happened, because Count Dankula mentioned they were at MagFest, and this all happened at MagFest 2015, where they basically were at MagFest talking about and seeing JewWario there, and JewWario was with a woman in question, and that woman happened to be the victim in question. Whether she was or not, we don't know what happened because we weren't there, but Pat witnessed seeing a woman in the escalator with JewWario. Count Dankula explained the story and heard from the woman that was the victim of the story and talked about it. So it does kind of explain something about this whole story in the timeline that happened back in 2014 at MagFest. Not all, yeah, they all want money. Yeah, they do want money, but the sad thing is, you know, I understand some of them, like, for example, Matt. You have to understand, I get where Matt's coming from, because he has a kid, and he basically is doing this for his kid to feed him, because having a kid isn't easy. It's an expensive thing. And Matt right now, you know, being the guy that he works as a PR guy, you know, talking to people and everything. Monday Matt, for example, you know, I don't hate him per se. I understand where he's coming from. You know, yeah, he could be a little bit of a slippery snake in a way, but you got to understand that, you know, yeah, he has a kid and he's willing to shill anything for money, and I'm not gonna hold it against him, because I understand that he has a kid and he has to, you know, be responsible and try to get whatever money he can to, you know, raise that kid, you know, as best as he can. And that's life, you know. Monday Matt, you know, I don't hate him for it. I understand where he's coming from. I don't, like most celebs, you know, their responsibility, their life, you know, is for their kid. And I don't have a kid, as you can see, you know. I'm not gonna talk shit about these people, because I know that these are, you know, some of them could be good people, some of them are not. You know, Pat and Ian, you know, they could be assholes for all I know. But I understand they're good people too. They try to be good people. Not everyone is always perfect, but there's always a reason why they always do this. Sure, Channel Awesome, for example, I'm pretty sure there are some good people in there, but there's also some bad people that ruined it for Channel Awesome. And I'm not trying to say that all celebs are evil. I'm just saying, look, I don't know them very well. Like Monday Matt, for example, you know, he may be, you know, scummy, but he's doing this because, well, he has a kid. And I'm not going to hold it against him for being that guy. Yeah, I do agree. They kept all the drama shit, because here was the thing I found out from what I read from the article from Ian Michaels Chung. This is what Dan Olsen did. This is what Dan Olsen did. He posted this on Something Awful. He said, "Okay, this is Dan Olsen. You know that little puppet right there. That's him. That's Dan Olsen's puppet that he uses on his videos." Now, for those who don't know who Dan Olsen, he poses as Formidable Human on Something Awful, and this is what he said. Okay. The overwhelmingly participants in the not so awesome document found out in reality, and this was on March 26, 2017. Found out the reality of all about the 2 weeks ago. So this is the only slightly less fresh to them as it is to everyone else today. It was decided that it wasn't their story to tell, especially since the knowing victims at the point just want this to go away. The people who knew for longer have been specifically asked by the victims to say nothing. They don't want to go through the intensify of the particular scrutiny, especially since it would spill over much more in the community, especially Justin's widow, creating a lot of trauma. And for what now? After all, Justin functionally settled down the issue himself. And there's a complicated issue specifically when it comes to managing the risk factor that is the Gamergate crowd. Yeah, this is what Dan Olson, of all people, did. They have, to no one's surprise, already started digging into every nook and cranny, digging out every ancient innuendo of accusations, using it to try to identify the victims and hurt people in general. This is what he believes. This is what's in Dan Olson's head. That's pretty much what they tried to. This is what Dan Olson tried to hide. That's what he thinks in his head. He believes in conspiracy theories in his head about Gamergate. Thus, he thinks that everything in Gamergate is involved in this. No, this has nothing to do with Channel Awesome. Channel Awesome had an issue. People brought out those issues. That was their own people bringing it out, not Gamergate. We just found out about it and heard about it. There's a difference, Dan, unless you're autistically dumb enough to believe in this shit that you think in your brain is I think your brain is malfunctioning, Dan, because that's right, Dan. Your brain is out of touch. Your brain is whack. The meth is in your fucking brain to making you look stupid, Dan. That's right, Dan. No surprise, Dan. You actually are retarded, Dan. You just made a stupid statement, Dan, thus making you look stupid, Dan. That's right, Dan. No one gives a shit, Dan. You fucked up, Dan. Congratulations, Dan. You're an idiot, Dan. That's what I'm going to say about it, Dan Olson. Because guess what, Dan? The shit just hit the fan, Dan. That's right, Dan. You just fucked up, Dan. You couldn't give a shit about it, Dan, because you're retarded, Dan. That's right, Dan. Because you actually are the dumbest motherfucker in history, Dan. For what you said right here, it has nothing to do. You just kept it silent because you don't want Channel Awesome to get wrecked by their own stupidity, by their own mistake, by their own justification because you think Gamergate did it. No, it was their own people bringing up stuff about Channel Awesome. Even the fans who literally saw what they did to Channel Awesome people and brought it out to the light. Not Gamergate. Not any of this shit. It was fucking their own people. Get that in your fucking brain, Dan. That's the truth, Dan. Why are you gonna be so fucking autistic, Dan? I'm sorry. That's how I feel about it, Dan. And I'm sorry. But I kind of, that's how I feel about this. And the thing about this is that, and we knew this information would have gotten out eventually in a certain sense, even needed to get out eventually, but ought to have to come out from the impact of individuals. Today is not a good day. This is what Dan thought. Congratulations, Dan. You made yourself look like an idiot, Dan. Thank you. Because it was their own people, Dan, that did this. Not Gamergate. Think about it, Dan. Think about it for a moment. It was their own people who brought this into the light of things. Even the fans that saw this. Even what they witnessed about this. This wasn't Gamergate's doing. This was all just all of this was their own people on Channel Awesome. Now, I'm going to be right back in a moment, so I'll probably have to get something to eat, so I'll be right back. Hold on. Alright, I'm back. Whoops. Whoops. Ah, crap. I hate when I drop something like this. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to tell you right now. Here are my thoughts on this. The fact that this has been so bad to the point where, you know, Dan thinks that Gamergate would have been involved in this. Too late, Dan. You put yourself in the limelight of blaming Gamergate when technically it was their own people who brought to light about Channel Awesome. The thing is, Dan, this has nothing to do with Gamergate. This has something to do with their own people who worked at Channel Awesome, especially those who volunteer, who had petty shit about, who talked petty shit about Channel Awesome. But there were things that were shady about Channel Awesome that I do agree with that should have never been out to the light of things. That should have been out of the light, how they treated people. And what you did, Dan, is basically suppressing it in a way that you felt was the wrong was wrong. And I'm sorry, Dan. You wanted to keep this on the down low because you didn't want to you wanted to prove that Gamergate was right the whole time. Guess what, Dan? How are people going to trust you? By the way that you portray yourself as this good guy, and then suddenly they find out you have a dark side. Especially when you post on a board called Something Awful. I'm not saying that there are bad people on there, but why did you post on there saying that stuff? And the fact that you knew this whole time, you knew all this shit happened. And this kind of shows how bad of a person you are, Dan. Especially how you try to, become the gatekeeper of the community. Especially how you became the savior. And guess what? You're no savior. Not by the slightest. No. You're pretty much trying to keep it down the down low because you're afraid that the victims might speak up. And already, one of the victims did speak up on this board and said something on April 14th. That was according to the date. April 12th, 2018. Dan, they spoke out about it. Guess you were wrong, Dan. Guess what, Dan? You miscalculated. Therefore, I proved my point. You're an idiot. Congratulations, Dan. You're a very good idiot. A useful idiot. A pretty damn good idiot. That's right, Dan Olsen. You're a far more complicated idiot who not every intelligent human being can be, well, intelligent all the time, Dan, but let me tell you something. An intelligent person can admit that they make mistakes. But you, Dan, you don't want to admit that you made a mistake. Because you're an idiot. That's right, Dan. And I'm going to tell you right now, Dan, you can make your points, you can make your arguments, you can make your bullshit up. But Dan, let me tell you something. You're a moron. By far the most moronic moron I ever met with autism. And I hate to say it, Dan. I hate to say this right now, Dan. You didn't want to bring this out to the light, knowing what the victims want, but when one of the victims spoke out about this, you kept silent, knowing back in 2017, and now in 2018, the shit just went out of the bag. So, Dan, I'm going to tell you this right now. You fucked up. So deal with it, bitch. So, remember, Dan, the internet is forever, bitch. And whether you post it or not, I'm pretty sure your IP will be known. And they will track it down. I'm pretty sure 4chan will know, because they know better than you. And they will laugh at you and mock you, and seeing how you say you're not that person, they know. God knows you try to cover this up, claiming what the victim wants. Already, you know, it's looking for a witch hunt. And right now it's becoming one, Dan, because you kept it a secret for a long time. Knowing in the light of things, well, the accusations hit the fan. And everyone knows, Dan. So, I'm going to go ahead and go. Catch you guys later. Good night. That's all I got to say about this. It's a sad story, indeed. Especially for those who remember JewWario. I'm not going to say, you know, you can hate on him. I understand that you all feel betrayed by this. Don't feel bad. Just move on with your lives. Live your lives as happily as ever. Good night. And Godspeed, everybody.